I never really considered Asia as a career field.
So what was it like being the youngest and only foreigner at this Chinese company, or let's say startup?
Certainly stepping into an environment that I was not familiar with and not particularly comfortable with.
You have started working in this Chinese company, starting from a leadership role. Was it because you knew the investor?
I started off as the kid.
To wrap it up, what would be your best piece of advice for an expat looking to... Hi, nice meeting you, Michael. So can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, yes, Ms. Yan. Thank you very much for having me on. My name is Mike Beda, the former director, founding member of Huaxia Finance. Lived in Shanghai for 4 years, Beijing for a year, and Hong Kong for a year. So just got back to America, but very happy to talk about my experience.
So tell us a little bit about your background. What made you come to China originally?
I originally came to China in 2008. So my goal as a kid was always to see the Olympics. And so this was something from a very young age I always wanted to do. I always wanted to take part in and witness this. And so in 2008, when Beijing hosted the Summer Olympics, I had the opportunity to come over and see a few of the games. Prior to that, I never really considered Asia as a career field. It wasn't on my radar. It wasn't on my mind. I saw people were optimistic. The economy was taking off, and you saw people bringing old box televisions out to the street and drinking Qingdao beer. And it was a great time to go somewhere where I had no knowledge of. People were very friendly. They were very opening, very accepting. And I said, this is where I want to be. So during my summer semesters, I did Beijing Language and Culture University and then Shanghai Institute of Foreign Study. So when I graduated, 2014, it took me about 9 days to sell my car and buy my plane ticket and made the move over to Beijing.
Wow, so those universities are both great, university in China. And how did you start working?
That was the tricky part. For a recent college graduate, I spoke Chinese at that point a little bit, enough to get by, but nobody was just hiring someone right out of college to move them across and start working in China. So I tried from the ground level. I moved to Beijing in May of 2014. And then started just go out to meet people, get involved with the American Chamber of Commerce and the European Chamber of Commerce, and tried to immerse myself in the professional environment. And I was very honest with people when I met them. I said, I don't have a job. I came here looking for a job. I have a 90-day visa. It's either sink or swim, looking for an opportunity. And so I actually first started working in a visa immigration program. And then right about at the end of 2014, you're not the only company pitching that idea. And especially at that time, I was still 22 years old. I was young, and I had an investor of mine, Benny Lee, brilliant man, came to me with the idea, and he said, I want to bring the concept of credit for China's emerging middle class. So I made the jump. I said, yes, absolutely. I love the idea. I've always been fascinated by credit. I don't particularly know everything about it, but I do want to learn. And so we started off, we were 13 people, and it's the original team of founding members. I was still 22. The next youngest person was 41, and I was the only foreigner on our founding members.
So what was it like being the youngest and only foreigner at this Chinese company, or let's say startup?
Difficult. This was not an easy endeavor. It was not a forgiving endeavor. It was certainly stepping into an environment that I was not familiar with and not particularly comfortable with. I wasn't fluent in Chinese, but it was something that I was interested in. And I knew that if I wanted to succeed at it, it would be a struggle. And so I got into the business knowing that this would be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life to that point. And there were, times I slept in the office, or there were times that I was extremely frustrated and thought that I'd quit and I'd go home the next day.
You have started working in this Chinese company, starting from a leadership role. Was it because you knew the investor?
I started off as the kid.
To wrap it up, what would be your best piece of advice for an expat looking to...
It wasn't easy. And I don't think anyone that's ever started a company or been one of the founding members of the company would ever say it's easy.
And how did you become a leader in this young company outside of your home country and culture?
It was a challenge, and I think it was overcome in a very straightforward way. That I said, I've never done this before. I know where I want the business to be in 5 years. I don't exactly know how to get there, but I need talent that is more technically knowledgeable than I was in order to guide me to that next step. So I simply put milestones in the road, and the people that worked for me, amazing people, they drove the car. And so we opened our doors, we cut our ribbon June 5th, 2015. I was in charge of opening up our Beijing office. We ended up opening another 12 offices in 3 months, and it was in industry that didn't exist. So we couldn't pull people with 50 years of experience. But we had to build people that were willing to do that and willing to make the sacrifices to do it. 6-7 days a week, 10, 12-hour days. And you got to know your coworkers like your siblings. And so it was really that kind of internal push, but it was always because we cared about one another. And even now, I think if somebody gave you a one-sentence description of me, is I don't sugarcoat it. So it's very straightforward. And I think if you approach leadership in a new company or new environment or an ever-changing environment, and you're honest with people about your expectations and how you hope to achieve those expectations, I think people will be far more willing to sacrifice something in their personal life in order to achieve something in their professional life.
And what is the hardest thing you have to do as a foreign leader to lead, a lot of Chinese employees in that company?
We have probably just over 13,000 employees to date. I saw over our foreign relations department for Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Hangzhou. But the biggest thing that I focused on, it branches with that honesty, that we would try something. You have to follow me, right? Here's the direction. We're going to give 100%. If it doesn't work, I'm responsible. If you don't work, you're responsible. Certainly a different way of management that a lot of other Chinese companies did, that even if there was a failure, it was always looked down as the employee's failure. I said, no, it's my failure. And it happened, right? Not all decisions were perfect, but I was very honest. All right, this didn't work. We're adjusting. We're scrapping that strategy. We're going to the next one. Once we got going, and it took about 8 months to really smooth out the kinks. And for almost a year, it was a little rough in the division. But after that, we knew what we had to do. We knew what it required. And when we brought on new people, it wasn't just me training them. And it wasn't just me being the voice of direction and trying something new. It was the team pushed them to it. You did have a respect, I guess, that was garnered from saying that nobody's done this before. I'm going to try to do it, and I want you to help me. And the people that saw it through, if they left the company, it was either this is the work environment for you, and we're going to learn together, or this is not the work environment for you.
It sounds for me like you set out a clear structure when you lead this company, and the people are very clear of their own responsibilities. And you also had numerous roles in the community. Mm-hmm. You were a guest lecturer of economics at a lot of universities like NYU Shanghai or Fudan. So why did you decide to do that apart from your job?
Just about every week, I would go to a different university: Fudan, Tongji, Holt, Jiaotong, Tsinghua, when I was still living in Beijing. And I did the foreign universities as well. So NYU Shanghai would have been the biggest recognizable name. From working in this very unique perspective, I gained a very unique view on a very specific type of finance in China. So number one, I wanted to share that knowledge. But on the other side, I had the most difficult experiences that I could possibly think of working as a foreigner in China. And I saw a lot of friends of mine had similar problems and didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And that's really what caused them to go home. Most people don't last a year in a professional Chinese environment because it is drastically different. Personally, I like it better, but it is something to get used to. It is very demanding. We lost our chop, right? We couldn't get this contract signed. We're having our vendors are renegotiating, or the government is not granting us access. And rather than look for solutions, talk with somebody who had maybe been in similar shoes as them, they took it personally. So by getting involved with either guest lecturing or speaking at the American Chamber of Commerce, my personal goal was always to tell people that they're not alone.
You have started working in this Chinese company, starting from a leadership role. Was it because you knew the investor, you have this relationship with the investor, or was it because you have Western background?
I started off as the kid, and it was partially a leadership role, I guess, of opening up an office. It was quite small at the beginning. I came to him after 2 or 3 months of understanding the business and said, I want to try this. I have an idea, right? I want to see if we can design this financial product and sell it to this audience. I think it's going to go out well. He said, all right, well, you can try it. If it doesn't work, you're gone. Because it was expensive and it would be a big risk to try this. So I had a hypothesis and I had a business plan. And so essentially I designed my own job, which if anyone's ever done that before, it's the most rewarding experience you'll ever have. You're not going to work a day in your life, right? You're not going to be sitting on the beach every day, but you're going to find value in it because it's something that you want to do. And I kind of built it off of my own project within my company. A lot of people don't realize that that's an option. If you want to have the best job that you're ever going to have, pitch it to your boss. Because if you can make them money and you can make the company money and you can make yourself money, they're going to say yes.
You took a risk in your job and you know the culture really well and you act in an honest way so that you can win their trust pretty fast. And to wrap it up, what would be your best piece of advice for an expat looking to follow in your shoes?
For any foreigner that would be wanting to especially move to China or another emerging market is get ready for a struggle. The things that are considered easy are not going to be easy. Things that are considered obvious are not going to be obvious. I remember when I first moved to Beijing as a small thing, right? It took me 3 days to find a store that sold deodorant. Just because I didn't know the Chinese word for deodorant and I was looking for an American stick of deodorant, it just wasn't like that, right? But it was just one of these things that you said, there were a lot of things that I looked at incorrectly for either shopping or using a taxi cab or booking travel. I went into it with a very American notion that there is a way that things are supposed to be done and I'm going to do them that way. I could not have been more incorrect. It's not just Americans with this mentality, it's everyone, right? Everyone has their own unique culture and then they have their own way of looking at something and then they have their own mentality to approach a problem. It's not going to work in every situation. And if you keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to spin your wheels. You're going to get yourself worn out and eventually you will fail out. So my best piece of advice would be if you're considering engaging into a new business or new environment or new culture, or if you're looking to move to China, reach out to somebody. You may have problems that you never anticipated in your life before, that for some reason your work may not be able to get you your visa. You need to solve that problem. It's going to seem insurmountable at the time. I've been faced with that problem. I was stuck in Hong Kong for 2 weeks. Run into issues where you're traveling and for some reason the train network is down. You're going to have to wait till tomorrow and you'll be out in the middle of nowhere on your way to a business meeting or on your way back home. If those things, which are small things, bother you, it's not the place for you. You need to be moving, you need to be learning, you need to be consistently challenging yourself every day. So it's a much more aggressive environment. Personally, I found it a far more rewarding and I met some of the most incredible people I may ever have the pleasure of working for and with. However, sometimes it's going to be a problem. You do need to take a step back and you do need to look at what is your next move. And so there's a difference between saying, well, I can't do it and I can't understand it, so I'm moving back to what's normal, or saying that I can't fix this, and I can't change it, and I'm not going to be the person stopping a tidal wave, so I'm going to ride the wave, and I'm going to follow where the trends go. You're never going to know all the challenges, but be willing to face them. And if you're wrong, be willing to ride it out and pivot to the next assignment.
Sound like you are really open to new things and you kept challenging yourself. That's great. So, well, it was great chatting with you, Michael. We got some great tips about how to lead in a Chinese company and how to cope with the culture thing and how to go up in the company ladder. So I hope it's just going to be helping more expats following your shoes. And I hope this can really help them find a new career position. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.